Welcome back, everybody. In our first module, you got Twine up and running, and we wrote our first branching passages. Now that you have the basic engine running, we need to answer a fundamental question. What kind of story structure are you actually building? When Western audiences think about story structure, they almost always default to conflict-driven frameworks, specifically Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, or the classic three-act structure. You know the beats. A hero leaves home, encounters conflict, hits a dark night of the soul, faces a final boss, and returns transformed. This structure dominates games from God of War to Star Wars Jedi Survivor because it maps cleanly onto player progression. As the hero levels up, the conflict escalates. But here's the trap many new game writers fall into. Not every game wants to be about conflict. If every story requires a villain, a crisis, and a bloody showdown, we lock ourselves out of huge categories of player experience. Enter Kishōtenketsu, a classic four-act narrative structure originating in ancient Chinese poetry and developed extensively across East Asia, particularly in Japanese literature, manga, and game design. Unlike the hero's journey, Kishōtenketsu is not built on conflict. Instead, it is built on introduction, development, a surprising twist or recontextualization, and a unifying resolution. If you've ever played a Nintendo game like Super Mario or Zelda, you've experienced Kishōtenketsu in action, not just in the dialogue, but in the level design itself. Let's break this down by doing a short analysis of the classic Super Mario Bros. Game and how its levels teach you its mechanics. First, we have Key Eye, the introduction. You're introduced to a safe mechanic like jumping on a bouncing donut block. Next, we have Show the development. The game complicates it. Now there are multiple donut blocks over a small pit. Then we have Tend the twist. The game introduces an unexpected twist. Donut blocks combined with a moving enemy or falling hazard. Your understanding of the mechanic is turned upside down. Lastly, we have Ketsu, the reconciliation. You use everything you've learned to complete a final challenge that harmonizes the twist with the original concept. Notice the difference with the hero's journey. There was no world-ending threat that was required to keep you engaged. The engagement came from curiosity, surprise, and actually mastery. I know some of you are interested in also becoming game designers. So it is important that you also think like a narrative designer. As narrative designers, understanding both structures gives you two completely different toolkits. First, we use the hero's journey when you want high emotional stakes, character transformation, and escalating conflict. Or we can use Kishōtenketsu when you want exploration, mechanical discovery, environmental storytelling, or cozy contemplative game loops, and walk through how to construct a Kishōtenketsu narrative tree right inside Twine. Let's dive in. All right, let's go ahead and launch Twine, hit New here. I'm just going to name this Kishōtenketsu and hit Create. And we're just really honestly going to create 4 passages that go through the Ki, Sho, Ten, and Ketsu. Each phase of the pipeline, it's going to be really basic. It'll be like a story about making bread because it's really good for making, the story structure is really good for making, cozy games. And I'll make another video following this where we dive deep into it as well as the hero's journey. But I want to make sure I touch on the Twine as soon as I can so you're playing around with something. So anyway, let's go ahead and select our first passage here and double click it. And I'm going to rename it and I'm just going to call it Key Introduction, hit OK. And then I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to type in some text here as well as our link. So when you're creating this, you just want to have an introduction. So you could say, you see here it says you spend your mornings in the bakery. So this is just sort of your setup. Dusting flour onto loaves of rye bread. Then we have here our link, and then this is going to be the direction to whatever our next node is. Remember we have this arrow. So if we go ahead and hit Control S to save this, it'll automatically, and I don't even think you have to hit Control S, but it'll automatically create the next node. So if I select this and I do test from here, and let me pause the video because it opened up the browser in my other window. You could see here's my text, and then here is my the focus on kneading the morning dough. So if I click on that, it goes to the next one, which is currently empty. So let's go ahead and fill this one out. All right, so I went ahead and just typed them all out to save time. So let's take a look at each one. So here's our introduction that we talked about where it sets up your scene. And then you have a link that goes to the development, right? Or show. So if we go in here, it says you knead the dough after dough, stacking fresh loaves onto display trays. Regular customers drop by, nodding happily as they take their daily bread. Everything is orderly, rhythmic, and familiar. So this is we're just sort of developing the story, what the scene is like, ordinary, kind of boring day. And then here's the twist, right, or the 10. So it says step into the back pantry to grab more flour. So what happens when we go inside of there? Inside the dark pantry, a glowing blue mushroom has sprouted directly out of a sack of grain. When you touch it, the flour in the air floats upward, completely defying gravity and forming swirling glowing clouds. So what you do is if we want to incorporate the floating glow, flour into tomorrow's recipe, you click on this link. I mean, we have a pretty linear story here. You could go with branching, off of this. But I just want to kind of again get you comfortable with twine as well as story structure. And then the final one is this. It's the reconciliation. So the next morning you bake your usually rye bread loaves, but now they're hovering an inch above the wood counter, glowing softly. The townspeople line up around the block, laughing in delight as they eat bread that makes them feel light as air. Your quiet bakery has become something magical. So this is something that like I could see this as Japanimation or sort of an anime. They do these kind of cute things. And so I'm gonna pause the video here. And what I'd like to do is I have kind of a homework challenge for you. And actually, before we jump into our homework challenge, I just want to show you, let's click on this and let's just test it out from here so you can just see that it all works. We're clicking these links. If you want to go back, you click here. So this is kind of, again, I love Twine. I think it's a great way of getting your ideas introduced. And then you can take this in after you fully formatted your story and you can embed it into something like Ink inside of Unity, or Unreal has its own dialogue managing system. Okay, so here's your challenge. I want you to build a Kishōtenketsu arc in Twine. Create a 4 to 6 passage Twine story that involves, obviously the flow. It must not contain a traditional villain or combat-driven conflict. Act 3, 10, must feature a distinct surprise or recontextualization of the story. Remember our mushroom. Export your file, click your story title in the bottom left corner and choose Published File. Upload your HTML to your website. Alright, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you the last one, how to submit it to upload it to your HTML file to your website. So I'm assuming that you're using Wix, which is what I require for some of the other classes. So let's go ahead and I'll show you the example of what you're going to build. Alright, here we are back in our page. Go ahead and you want to hit publish the file once you're done with it, or back in Twine rather. And then I made a folder on my desktop called Twine Projects, and I just exported one called Kishōtenketsu here, and I saved it. Now what you're going to do is you're going to navigate to that folder, and you're just going to open this up. And once your page is open, you can see we can click through. What you're going to do is on this first page, you're just going to right click, and you're going to do let's see, view page source. I'm actually in Chrome. I think this would work in anything. And you're gonna hit Control A. If it doesn't highlight, you gotta click inside of here, Control A, and then hit Control C. And then let's jump over to your Wix site. All right, so I put together the example really quick of what we're gonna make. So you can see here, I have it called Kishōtenketsu up top, and then here's my actual project. And then when you go to publish it and you go to send your website to other people, which is going to have all of your games and this other stuff, if they go to your narrative page here, they'll be able to see your project. And they'll be able to click on it and interact with it. So let me show you how I did that. So go back to Wix. And when you first log into your Wix dashboard through Gmail, so really all you got to do is sign up for Wix and make a page. If you need help with that, let me know. I think I have a video that I posted earlier on that. You'll have your page. You'll hit Edit Site. And what I'm going to do is, I think I'll just go ahead and make this from scratch again. I'll delete my narrative page to show you that. All right, so what I want to do is, again, go to About Me, go to Manage Pages, and add a page. And the page that I'm going to do is just a blank page, which is up in this left-hand corner. And for that blank page, I'm going to name it Game Narrative. Let's click Done. And then for the title, you can go to Add Element here, and there's text. I'm just going to add a heading 1, and then just Game Narrative. And then below that, I'm going to go down to embed code, embed HTML. And I'm going to make this box pretty big, like that. And the page, let's see, we click here. We can add a section below this. Add section, yeah, and there we go. I believe if we drag this out now, we shouldn't have any cutoff because we have another section below it. If you want to, just to make sure, just add like a title, big title here, and then we'll add another big title here. And then for this title, I'm just going to name it Kishōtenketsu. And then if I double click this, it allows me to add that HTML code from essentially our project, which you can remember is here. So I'm just going to copy that, paste it in here, hit update, and there it is. So now when you publish this, let's take a look at how it looks. I'm going to have view site, and if I go to game narrative, give it a second, there's game narrative, Kishōtenketsu, and something is going on. I think maybe because it's split between the two. Let's see. Let's go back here. Done. Will it work if I go like this? It's up here. Yeah, there we go. I think it had to be in that section. But now you can scroll up and down and you could see your game on your game narrative site. And this is also going to be the way that if you're taking the course with me, you'll submit it. It might be a different way for other people. But anyway, that's one way to do it anyway, to show off your projects. And that's it for this lesson.